All right, we're here with Matt Beasley. He's a candidate for Justice of the Peace 3, which basically incorporates most or all of the Woodlands and east of I-45 Rayford Road corridor. I'm John Wirtz, and with me is Larry Rogers, Del Fessenden, James Byers, Maureen Ball, Dennis, and Pat Tibbs. So with that, Matt, go ahead and get started with your 5-minute open.
Well, do I talk to the camera? Can I talk to you guys? My name is Matt Beasley. I am running for Justice of the Peace, Precinct 3. I'm a Republican candidate. I believe in the Republican platform and true conservatives. I grew up here. I actually went to high school here, and at a young age, I showed a pretty keen interest in law enforcement, and I got involved with the Police Explorer program through the constable's office when I was 15 years old, and I would spend my weekends riding with law enforcement because I knew what I wanted to do. A lot of my friends, even after they got out of college, they didn't know what they wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do at a very young age, and I worked to do that. I put myself through the police academy. I worked at the fire department. I worked a night shift in a basement as a dispatcher when I was going through the police academy. And at 21 years old, I graduated from the academy. I took the test in Austin. I passed it, and the next day, the constable hired me to be a patrol deputy. And I did that work until I was transferred to the sheriff's office. Majority of my patrol time was down here in South Montgomery County. And then I promoted to detective and did that for about 4 years. I now currently work for James Nowak. I'm his chief of staff. I manage the day-to-day operations and the capital projects there at the precinct. I think the Justice of the Peace Court is a very important court. I really think that we need a place where people can come and resolve disputes and not get bogged down. So I am interested in getting to know y'all's thoughts on the Justice of the Peace race, and I'm happy to be here. So I think that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on again.
Sure.
A couple questions on the general category, if you will, right up at the beginning. What was your graduation date from Tarleton?
2014 maybe.
Okay.
It was recently, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember. That was one of the things that I always wanted to accomplish. It just took me a lot longer to get there than most people, but I did it. And I did it as a father of 2 kids working full time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Knew your professional coursework through SAM, credentials as certified public manager. Was that recent? Or
I think that was 2012 maybe? No, that was 2013.
Okay. So in your career path, you basically went from being a law enforcement officer and out of law enforcement into the precinct, working for Commissioner Nowak, and now kind of coming back full circle in law enforcement. So I guess some people would say you kind of went, kind of a side path to get to the Precinct 3 Commissioner's office and then back into law enforcement. Why that path instead of just straight up through JP?
Well, for several reasons. Number one, the Justice Court is a court. It's not a court for just law enforcement officers. Now, generally, that's what you see candidates. They have a law enforcement background, and that tells the citizens that they know I can interpret the law and apply it because I've done it as a police officer. But it's not exclusive to law enforcement. It's not even a law enforcement function. It's a place where people come and they can take care of their civil disputes, or they can take care of their Class C criminal citations. But the notion that you need to be a law enforcement officer to do it is false. And I think my separation from full-time law enforcement for 5 years now is a benefit, not a hindrance.
Okay.
Over the past several years, we've interviewed for justice of the peace system. I don't guess we've ever interviewed a justice of the peace candidate that has not been a justice of the peace. They all have done something else, and usually the background is in the law enforcement. How do you get overnight, or as quickly as possible, how do you get into the system and learn how the justice of the peace system works, and what you can do and what you can't do and all that? How do you accomplish that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's going to be really hard, but like everything I've done in my life, you got to work hard to do it. Before I managed road projects, I didn't know anything about road projects. I mean, I knew how to do some project management, but I've gotten and I've learned how to do my job through on-the-job training. And so if I win in March, God willing, I'm going to spend a lot of my time not with Edie Connolly, not only with Edie Connolly, but some other Judge Spikes in Conroe and some other JPs, and not only in Montgomery County, learning the work of the Justice of the Peace. I'm not going to pretend to know everything that they do, or that it's going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. But that's my plan, is to spend my time before I take office, learning everything I can, not only from the JP courts, but from other courts in and around Montgomery County, and district courts and county courts at law. I mean, I'm fully invested into learning the work.
If you would, is there a time frame? Obviously, when you're elected in March, and if you became the Justice of the Peace, when would you have to take over that office, and how would you handle your training in between time? In other words, would you still work for the Commissioner's Court and learn? How would that work?
Yeah, so I would stay full-time at the job I have now. I mean, ultimately, if something were to happen and I had to take the job the day after I won the election, wow, I'm running for the office. You know, that's a responsibility I've taken, and I will do a good job. But you know that from March to January, I'll use my vacation time that I have with the county to go volunteer at the JP's office, and Edie Connolly has agreed to do that. She would let me go clerk, and I mean, I want to know everything. I want to know everything from the data entry to how the docket's set, and I mean, I want to know every single thing about the court, because that's the only way I know how to do it.
Okay, figuratively speaking, you've got some pretty big shoes to fill. At least the figures I've seen, JP3 has dealt with more than double the cases of any other JP in the county. I know you've made some references in your answers about efficiency. I guess first of all, why do you think JP3 is able to deal with more than double anybody else? And second of all, if you can improve upon that, what efficiencies do you currently have in mind lending in that direction?
The JP court has the most cases by a large number, like you suggested, and they have the biggest staff, not by much. They're able to just do more with less, it seems, and I think the sheer volume of cases, they have to, right? I mean, so in ways I think I can improve is I would really like to take a real hard look at resets that people do on the court. I think constantly resetting court dates is not fair. And I think especially if you file a lawsuit on someone, you should be prepared to go to court. I mean, if the defendant, the person who's being sued needs to be a reset so they can prepare their case or something. But I think if you come in, you file a lawsuit, you should be ready to go to court. And my experience through friends of mine, through probate court, county court, they've had a probate case in this county court down in Brazoria for like 9 years. They still don't have a judgment, and it's a dispute over family and how they're going to break the estate up. But that's I don't want to participate in delaying people getting a judgment, and I want people to be ready to go to court if they file a lawsuit.
But you don't really have control over whether they come in prepared or not, and I don't know, can you turn down the deferral?
Well, it's case-by-case basis. I'll work with people. If it's a legitimate reason why you can't come to court, that's okay. But for instance, if John were to sue Larry, right, because John needs to collect a debt because he bought a debt from a credit card company, John could sue Larry, and then he'll start his collection process because it hasn't really worked up until that point. But once you file a lawsuit in the court and the court sends a subpoena or a citation saying, Larry, you're being sued, now Larry really has a little more incentive to talk to him about it. And so what I think sometimes happens, not all the time, is that the court will be used as a way to collect a debt when they may not ever had any intention to go to court. And so it constantly is reset while there's negotiations going on. Well, that takes the court's time. It uses the staff there. And I think if you file a lawsuit, you should be ready to have a judgment.
Okay, James?
You talked about the criminal law. I'm going to ask you about some civil law. Let's say someone comes to your court, you'll get a lot of credit card issues, that sort of thing, small debts, and there's a credit card company or a spouse. I'll say spouse 1 and 2, since you can't really know male or female these days. Spouse 1 has a credit card and no job. Spouse 2 is the income earner. And the credit card company sues in your court for $3,000 against spouse 1 and 2 with a list of the charges by spouse 1. But there's no credit card contract included in the filing. And both spouses say, well, there's no contract. We want the case dismissed. That's my first question. So what would you do in that particular situation?
Well, I can't really comment on something like give you a
Purely hypothetical, but it's the facts that would occur. What would be your decision on something like that?
I really wish I could, even in a hypothetical situation, because this may come before me as a judge. But
Sure.
What I would say is that, if I'm going to follow the law, if someone has a contract.
Well, so that's the question then. What will be the law in this particular situation?
Yeah, it seems like that if they didn't, from what you're saying is they didn't sign up for the credit card because you have a use
Well,
agreement.
they may or may not, but the credit card company did not provide to you a copy of any contract.
I would want the credit card company to provide the contract. If
So they
want
did
to
not,
roll.
then you, okay. Now, the other issue was, let's say that there was a credit card contract, but remember, spouse 1 is the one that opened the card, and the suit is against spouse 1 and 2, but spouse 1 has no income, and that's why both are attached to the suit, and spouse 2 wants you to remove that person. What would be the law on that issue?
I'm trying to follow you.
Sure. Spouse 1 has the card, opened it, signed the contract.
Mhm.
Spouse,
That's it. Okay.
spouse 2 had nothing to do with it. They're spouses. Spouse 1 has no job, so no way to really repay it. So the credit card company sued both of them because they're married.
Mhm.
All right. Is spouse 2 going to be liable for any debt incurred by spouse 1?
Well,
When it was not specifically with spouse 2's
I-
written permission?
I can say that I think that I believe that contract should be with the contract holder in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, I don't plan to like.
So
tell
spouse
you-
two wouldn't really have any liability in such a case?
I'm seeing that's kind of the road we're going down. I can't really answer that through the judicial code of conduct, how I
Well,
would deal
what does
with
the
that
law
case.
state? Do both spouses have responsibility for each other's debt?
Yes, in some circumstances.
What would be one that you would think of?
In certain financial obligations.
Credit cards?
I don't know that. I don't know that for certain.
All right, I'll go ahead, Marie.
I'm assuming
you.
that
Sure.
as a judge, you would look at the pleadings that the parties have in place, correct? And so defendants could raise different issues.
Sure.
All right. And a lot of times I hear law enforcement basically being the state coming in with a case if it's a criminal matter. What are your thoughts about seeing that justice is served for the defendants as well?
I think that justice should be served for everybody involved. When I hear a case from either party and I make a ruling, that ruling in my mind is going to be a just ruling for everybody that's involved.
But
I'm
you're
not
gonna-
there to work for the state. I'm not there to work for the defendant or anyone else that files anything in that court. I'm just there to hear particular circumstances to each case and make a ruling.
I know that as a JP, you've got the authority to waive fees and to work with the defendant as far as fines go. Would you view your role as interested in each individual defendant more so than collecting monies for the county?
The JP's office is not a tax collector or fee collector. That's not my purpose, is to go make the county money.
Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Okay. We heard your opponents last night, and one of them has a long experience in law enforcement. The other one has a long experience as a DA. And you've already discussed the part about law enforcement. How do you think that, what kind of advantage would that guy have in getting up and running? And also, do you think you're gonna have an opportunity to learn all the laws, or are you gonna depend on the parties in a suit to supply you with references to the law? Or how are you gonna have the information to make those decisions?
Well, all the above. First, let me address the one about the attorney.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
what-
the DA now, I think, or assistant DA.
Do I think that he can start faster than I can and take over the court? No, not at all. I mean, I think all three of us are competent, qualified candidates. I don't think anyone has a leg up on me, and if they do, I'll work harder than them. So, in regards to, what was the second?
Well, in terms of, you're not gonna be able to win an election and then in a month or two become a lawyer. So you're not gonna know all those laws.
Well, I know a large majority of the laws, especially the criminal, the traffic only, or fine only criminal laws. I know most of those already, and the forcible entry and detainer for evictions and writ of possessions and those things.
And how about credit card statements, Most credit card companies, they're gonna say, by virtue of using the card, you made a contract or something like that.
Yeah, and in cases that I need to spend more time on, I will. I mean, I've been to justice court before for as a law enforcement officer, and the judge will not even make a ruling. They'll go in their chambers and research it and do their own work. I'm not gonna rely on people to give me the facts and tell me how I should rule.
Well, if there's a lawyer present, isn't he gonna say, my case rests on certain code of law enforcement, paragraph 1, 2, subparagraph something? Don't they normally give you some?
Sure, and
reference to support
I'll
you?
look at it. But I'll also do my own research. I mean, the justice of the peace is the judge of the court. And so, yes, and if the defendant wants to give me something to look at, I'll look at every piece of evidence.
Is there a helper there for you? Is there anybody that's like a backroom support
There is an office man.
that might get the book out for you to read and open it up to page or something?
Yes, or there we have, the county has an account with like LexisNexis where
Okay.
you can pull that stuff up
All right,
fairly
good deal,
quickly.
thanks.
Yeah.
Do you believe in term limits?
I do, just not for local races. So for instance, especially for Congress and Senate, absolutely.
But not,
No, I feel
County.
like, for instance, like if I win Justice of the Peace and I do a really bad job and I'm just not a good Justice of the Peace, the voters can just vote me out. That's my term limit. I think with Congress and the Senate, they raise so much money, they get so much money that it's just really hard to get anyone, if they're bad, to get them out.
so only at the federal level? What about the state level?
I still think, I mean, I think the state is, the voters decide. I still think it's, you know, the term limit is they do a poor job, a candidate can go beat them.
Okay. How long do you plan to serve in this capacity?
I don't know. As long as I feel like I'm doing good in the community and I have support and I enjoy the work, I don't plan to be there 20, 25 years, 30 years or anything like that, but I don't want to put a number on it.
Good.
Explain how the JP, you'll hear Justice Peace pronounced Joe dead in an automobile accident at 12 o'clock last night. How does that work? Do you get calls? Are you responsible for everybody that dies in Precinct 3 to pronounce them dead?
Yes, not for every one of them. Now, there's certain situations under a doctor can sign that says that they were under medical care and the reasons. And the JP can go in and say, well, that's fine, but I still want to do an inquest into the death. That's the ultimate responsibility of the justice of the peace.
You make that decision.
Yes. And so there's been, this year, 697 death inquests in Precinct 3.
Looks like with all the daily stuff that the Precinct 3 has to do with JP's court, how in the world can you do it at night? My goodness. Perhaps people did it.
She does it.
Yeah.
And for precinct alone, there's been that many?
Yeah,
600, how many?
697, I believe, was the file number you showed me.
That's several every day.
Along that line, what were the changes that you'd make? And you basically talked about using possibly some of the other JPs. How would that work? Partner with other JP courts to reduce backlog dockets when needed. How would that work?
Well, I would invite a justice of the peace down here, set them up in a room so they could hold court, and basically have 2 JPs with some staff going through the docket, clearing the backlog.
So that would be, the backlog that is there, is that from the other justices of the peaces?
No, that's just at Precinct 3, the sheer volume of cases, sometimes there's backlog there. I mean, there's just no other way. I mean,
Do other
she needs.
JPs have backlog also?
I have not looked at their case, their docket. I just know that the volume of Precinct 3 is a lot higher.
Yeah.
So I think their caseload's a lot more manageable.
Okay, one of the functions of a JP is to perform weddings. And would you set aside time out of the normal, shall we say, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 time for that function? I also understand that it is optional whether the JP wants to perform weddings or not. You can say, no, I'm not going to do that, or yes, I will. And so my second question, in addition to the time set aside, is if you choose to do weddings, would you perform weddings for same-sex couples?
The first question is, yes, they can do weddings whenever they want to, especially, my personal opinion, if I were to do weddings, I wouldn't do them during the workday. There's too much other work to be done. And two, I'm just not interested in performing weddings for anyone, so.
Okay, James?
Let's say you have a school that reports a child as being truant, and the mother and the child appear in court, and the mother says the child's being homeschooled, and the school complains, well, we were never told of that. So what would be the law in that particular case? Is the child truant or what?
If they're homeschooled, they're not truant. I mean,
Well,
back to, let me put the disclaimer out there.
sure,
I can't tell you exactly how I would rule in that situation because it may come before me and I need to hear all the facts and
Sure.
circumstances.
sure.
I think that, I do believe that parents have the right to have their kids homeschooled, and that truancy from homeschool doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, that's good. Now, let's say there's another situation, this one, where, when people do work in your home, they can always file a lien against your home for the service if it's not paid for. Let's say in this case, the person providing the service, the repair at the home, accepted a check from the homeowner, and on the back of the check was verbiage that said, this is payment in full, and no service lien will ever be filed. Well, the person that gets the check strikes through all that and signs it, and then files in court saying, well, I was only paid half of what I was supposed to be paid, and market rate sounds like it's a reasonable rate. What would be the particular law in that situation?
Kind of, as I said before, I can't really tell you how I would rule.
Well,
the
in-
preponderance of the evidence is the standard.
Let's
for
say,
any
would you
civil-
say that the back of the check, if someone writes that, payment in full, no lien will be filed, is that, and the person strikes it through and signs the check and cashes it, did striking through that make it null and void in that regard, and the check, so they can make it plain?
I think that's good evidence for the court to consider.
What about the fact that that would also be called, in other words, if someone modifies a check and cashing it, don't you think that's an issue?
I think, yes, I think, like I said, I think this is all good evidence for the court to.
So you don't think that's a negative thing then?
I'm sorry?
If someone gives me a check and I modify that check and cash it,
Mm-hmm.
is that acceptable?
Yeah, I.
Legally.
My personal opinion
Yeah.
is if I write you a check, don't change it.
All right, so but you're saying that, okay, all right, we'll move on from that.
And I know for a fact that that case has been in Precinct 3 court.
Really?
Hmm.
I was thinking of incidences in Georgia, actually, not
Oh,
here. Yeah. One last thing. Let's say in the credit card agreement,
Is it over 2 minutes?
No, it's at 40 seconds.
Okay.
there is a provision that all legal disputes would be done through arbitration.
Mm-hmm.
All right? The credit card company is the one that brings it to your case. And let's say the person that owes the debt says, well, we're supposed to do this through arbitration. Would you then refer it for arbitration without the credit card company's agreement? Would you feel it's obligated to abide by that, or would you go ahead and hear the case?
I would, I can't say for every time.
Yeah, right,
Here's
that's fine.
So my philosophy is, right, as if I'm elected justice of the peace,
Right,
I won't do a whole lot of mediating. If someone files a lawsuit.
Right.
I want to hear it. I want to give a judgment.
so you would ignore the part about requiring the contractual agreement to use an arbitration service?
No, I don't think I said that. What I said is when someone files a suit, I want to be the one to hear it.
Right,
And that contract is evidence of that case, so that contract would be looked at and considered.
well, do you think a contract prohibiting a suit and requiring arbitration is something that should be enforced?
I'm sorry?
Do you think a contract that prohibits a lawsuit but requires a third-party arbitration, and they usually will specify who they'll use, is that going to be enforceable?
I think it would be something that I would look at on a case-by-case basis.
You don't know, though, if it's enforceable legally or not?
If the language in there is enforceable?
Yeah.
That's what the court determines.
Well, you would be the court, right?
Right, and that's what I'm saying, it would be something I would look at on a
But
case-by-case basis.
you don't know, you're saying. You have to go look it up, right? That's what I'm asking.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm not, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I would look at the contract. It would
Right?
be a part of the evidence that I consider on the case.
Okay. Marie?
And as a judge, you would be under a duty to, again, look at all the pleadings filed by both parties, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you are under an obligation that there's so many nuances in every single case, it's just impossible for you to say how you would rule. You can't.
That's correct.
All right, you made an interesting point about the number of cases and that you might bring in a second JP.
Mhm.
And I just had a question about funding and about that person being unelected. If there's really a need for a second JP, shouldn't that be part of a budget item that comes up when we have another elected position?
Yes, I think that is a very good question and statement. If the court becomes to where I constantly have to have other JPs that aren't elected from the people down here come and help me handle the court's business, then yes, I think that would be something the county commissioners court should consider. But if it's just on very rare occasions, just every now and then, I mean, the JPs hear each other's cases all the time, you know, they help each other out. And I think working as a team, you can get a lot more done. And so in that instance, I would say that we wouldn't need one. But if it became a habitual thing, then yes, I think that they probably would need to have another court elected justice of the peace.
Related to the medical examiner that I think was brought up earlier, do you have an opinion about whether or not this county should have a separate entity as a medical examiner at this point?
Well, with Judge Conley doing 690-something death inquests and the year's not over with, I think it's something that the court needs to seriously consider, the commissioner's court. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not going to do the work, because I'm going to do it. So as long as that's what's available is me to do it all, I'm going to do it all. But I do think there is some value in that, and I think there's some triggers in state law that require that once you get to a certain population through the census, they're going to have to fund it.
But would you be open to being on some sort of committee with the county that would look at implementing that, since we're close to being forced to do it?
I would be very upset if I weren't on that committee.
All right, thank you, that's all I have right now.
But you're not talking about a visiting JP, you're talking about barring precinct 1, 2, or 4 JP.
That's correct.
Okay. And does the state allow us to have other JPs?
Yes.
I mean, right now, coincidentally, we got one for precinct, right?
Yes.
I mean, one for each constable or each commissioner precinct, really.
There's 5 JPs.
Each constable.
And 5 JPs and 5 constables in every county,
And
or more JPs.
And the commissioner precincts are defined by law, right? Everybody's got 4.
That's correct, and it's defined by population.
Okay, real quick, did you say that you were not gonna do weddings?
No, I'm not gonna do weddings.
Okay. And the next question concerns things that the court does related to defendants that live out of the area. Right now, if you file a suit against somebody that lives in Austin or some other place, it goes through the process here, and then you come down here and you get a copy of the judgment paperwork, and then you go home and copy it, and then you mail it to somebody else, and it goes back and forth through a plaintiff, really. Isn't there a way that we can work with a Dallas court or a Dallas constable without the plaintiff having to do all the middle work? Couldn't Precinct 3 fax or scan and send that information to some other county?
Well, the courts can communicate how they can communicate with each other. Some courts, some judges won't do I heard a JP court the other
But
day.
JP3 does it right now.
Right.
Does not do that.
I will do whatever I can to accommodate the people who want to have business in front of the court. I heard of a situation where someone faxed something to a particular JP's office in another county, and they sent a fax back saying, we don't accept faxes. You
We don't have a fax machine.
need to deliver it or mail it. But they had the information, so that it's like, I don't want to make it more difficult on people. It's already hard enough that you have to go before the JP to get, you're at a point where you want to get something done, and then to be told, I can't take a fax, or you need to go drive this down here, is stuff that I would certainly work on.
Okay, good deal.
Maureen made a comment a little while ago that it's hard to cover all the situations that could come before you, on a daily basis. Do you think that a legislature can write law that makes sense for 25 million people, in whole or in part, from that perspective? And do you think that the JP's office, if you see a law coming down before you, and your gut is telling you that this thing is just unconstitutional, do you have an outlet to that, an avenue to where you can take that up to a higher court and go against the grain?
Well, if I think it's unconstitutional, then yes, I have an issue with that case. And the person who filed the suit or is before me for a criminal matter, they have the right to appeal. I mean, that's the thing about the Justice of the Peace Court. It's not a court of record. And I just want to pivot a little bit about the attorney. How the attorneys, could have a upper hand on me and all this other stuff. The Justice of the Peace Court is a court where regular people can come before a regular person who's reasonable and elected and get a judgment in a pretty timely fashion. I think if you put an attorney in a JP court, then you have regular people who are intimidated that they don't know the law, and they need to go now get attorneys to go resolve this dispute. And back to what you were saying, laws are made by the legislature. That's what they're supposed to do. I'm not changing law. That's not my job. So I would, if I felt something was wrong, I would get involved in the political process through the legislature and let them know, hey, here's my issue with this, and this is how I see it. But yeah, the judges aren't supposed to legislate. And do I think legislatures can do it all for 25 million people? They're supposed to. That's what they're elected to do. Now, whether or not they get the job done is, we can debate that all day, but.
The JP, being a judge, JP judge, is that will this be a step up financially for you or a step down?
The pay, it would be an increase in pay. I'm certainly not getting involved in this because I'm gonna make a whole lot more money.
Dave?
Okay, I've wrestled with the answer that you gave for the last question. What carries the greatest influence in your ruling? Case law, Constitution, or other? And you've clearly answered that the Constitution is prime, and that's fine. The statement that I'm still wrestling with is case law, precedent, and stare decisis is important because it promotes stability and reliability in the court system. That seems to say that, how does that fit in with the Constitution as prime? Can you explain that to my confusion, maybe?
Yeah, so constitutionally is the first step. Is this constitutional? If it's not, then it doesn't go to any case law review. It's just simply not constitutional. If it is constitutional and maybe there's some precedent for that particular type of case, I think it's good to look at, but it certainly isn't do what everyone else is doing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that it gives people, it points people to other situations that may have some similarities and provide opinion on it.
Okay. And getting back to the caseload, with the number of cases that JP3 deals with, even if you divided that in two, it seems to me you're not going to have a whole lot of time to be researching case law. So again, it gets back to what position does case law have? If in a murder trial, I'm sure that they do countless hours of research before they actually enter the courtroom. But with your caseload there, you won't have the opportunity for that. So I guess I'm thinking that case law, unless it's a case you're familiar with, is probably not going to play a big part.
If I guess my best statement would be in situations where it's presented to me or I think it's good to look at, I will. But no, I will not be doing a whole lot of reading case laws about different, every case that comes through the court. That court, I don't have time to do that.
Right. Okay. James?
Yeah, let's say that there's two parties, one's pro se and the other's represented by attorney. This has nothing to do with factually, basically we'll say the opposing lawyer makes an argument or the statement that is wrong, but the pro se says nothing because they just don't know. What is your responsibility in that situation to assist the pro se litigant?
I believe the justices of the peace now are supposed to ask certain questions to elicit information that they would need to make a ruling.
Sure.
So I would ask certain questions to see if I could get the information from the person who's representing themselves.
Right. Well, let's say there's a witness, I guess to be more specific. The lawyer asks a particular question of the witness, and the pro se, and you're aware enough of the facts to know something more, the pro se should do something and they don't. Are you going to notify the pro se there's something they should do or not?
I will ask questions of the pro se that will give me information that I think is needed for the evidence to be presented to me.
Mm-hmm. Is there a limit to how much you would help a pro se?
I would do what I felt necessary to get the information to where I can make a good judgment.
What if, one other thing, then I'll turn it over to Maureen. In a case that comes before you on a financial matter, is your court able to issue subpoenas for records or anything like that?
Yes.
So if someone wants to issue a subpoena for bank records for the purpose of collecting, should they get a judgment, would you allow that particular subpoena if it's objected to?
Yeah, there's a discovery subpoena that a lot of banks will want to use, and they'll send. Yeah.
Well, no, the bank's not a party.
No, okay, for whoever's collecting the debt, we'll want, hey, here's discovery. Well, we want to ask them 175 different questions about their life, financial, who they know, where they live, what they own. I would look at every discovery request and look at the questions, and I would want to limit it to what they need.
For collecting the judgment?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
I am concerned about countywide, there seems to be an emphasis on all courts to move cases rather than to really take time and make sure justice is done in each case. Can you go backtrack a little bit, because you kind of made a comment that sounded like you were interested in pulling through a case and maybe not taking time on it because there were so many cases.
Yeah, I thank you. Let me rephrase. My number one priority is to see that impartial justice has been accomplished, in my opinion. What I meant by case law is I don't, my court is, you can't appeal it to a court of record. I will do my due diligence and meet my standard of reviewing and scrutinizing evidence and listening to the case. But I will render a judgment. But I won't treat anyone any different. I mean, if there's a case that I feel like I need to take more time on it, that's absolutely what I'm going to do.
One thing that I haven't seen a lot in this county is the use of the County Bar Association to help address different issues. Would you be open to working with the County Bar Association to address whatever may be needed, like maybe more community education about how you present a case in JP Court?
I would absolutely be interested in educating not just the Bar Association, but the public. With E.D. Connolly being more of an institution down here, a lot of people have forgotten what the JP's office is or what they do. So I'm going to have to spend a lot of time educating people, and I'm looking forward to doing that because it's an important court.
Right, I thought that maybe it would be helpful to partner with the Bar Association to help educate the community, and that makes it serve the entire county a lot better.
Yeah.
If more people have knowledge about the JP Court.
Sure. No, absolutely. I see what you're saying, and I will work with anyone, any group.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've been to mediation several times, and what I have learned that they have absolutely no interest in what is legal or what is fair. Their goal is to dispose of the case. And a lot of courts, and I've been to JP3 several times, default to mediation. And you'd said you might not consider that such a high priority option. So what's your criteria for listening to cases and deciding which ones you can rule on and which ones you want to send out to mediation in hopes of getting them off the docket?
So with mediation, it's not binding. I could go with Pat. We could go to JP Court, file a suit. You could send us to mediation. We could agree something, walk out of there, and 6 months later, we're back to filing the same lawsuit that should have been heard and dealt with the first time. Unless there's something very particular or maybe a conflict, I know somebody, and then I would have another judge come in.
Mediation has been that the mediator sends a report to the judge and the judge signs off on the case.
Yeah, I think they sign off that it was mediated, and it's now it's basically seen as the court handled the case when really a mediator did. But if they don't fulfill what they agreed to in mediation, then they're right back in the courtroom. So I think that if people elect me to be the justice of the peace, I'm going to sit on the bench and do my job, and I think that's what people want.
I think it probably is.
Where do appeals from JP Court go?
County court,
County?
county court of law.
Okay. Is there any particular one that it goes up to?
I think it just gets assigned to the court administration, and they assign it to.
Assign from there, okay. One of the questions I had, what is the job of a judge? Your answer was providing impartial justice to the citizens, full stop. What does full stop mean? Is
I
that
mean,
the full
period.
board?
That's period.
Okay.
That's their job.
All right. That's all I got. Oh,
Go ahead.
hang on.
Go ahead.
Spoke too soon.
Yeah. So what do you do with your free time now that you won't have if you're elected?
I don't know. I mean, I've always enjoyed a challenge. I like to work hard. I occasionally, I mean, I'm a sports fan. I have 3 kids, 3 young kids, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 7-month-old. So I'm already busy, but I can be busier. And, I mean, I just go, like I said, I won't watch as much sports or, you know, I don't really have any hobbies that I just absolutely love and would take away. I really do love what I do now. I love working for the county and doing the job that I do. And will love the JP job. So,
Yeah, because there's big projects coming down the pipe, you
mhm.
know, for Precinct 3, and mobility, plan transportation. I think we got time for one or two more questions.
I'll yield to that.
Okay. One of the questions was about what do you think the most significant issues are in this race? And one of your answers was providing fair and impartial court. That could be taken in a couple of ways. You could say, well, maybe the court's not fair and impartial right now, but I don't think that's your implication. I think that is something that maybe you intend to distinguish you from the other candidates in this race. So could you elaborate a little bit why you think you can be more fair and impartial than the other candidates in the race?
I can't draw that distinction, that I'm more fair or more impartial than them. I just know that that's important to me for whoever is the justice of the peace. Obviously, I'm running for the position because I think I will do a good job and I care about that court. But I'm not saying that if someone else is elected, that's not one of the most important things to continue the court. Do you?
Okay,
Okay.
fair enough. James?
Quick first,
Go ahead.
quick question.
But-
Then we're gonna wrap
Go.
it.
No, I'm fine. Okay, no.
You good?
I guess it's up to you.
Well, why don't we close on that note, and then if you want to do your closing up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, number one, thank you guys for listening to me. Y'all, obviously have a lot of influence in the community. I know this is not easy for you guys. I guess at the end of this, y'all probably have 80 hours of your own time into doing this. And it means something to the community that groups like this do stuff, and listen to the candidates and learn about them. Because a lot of people don't have the interest or time, and people rely on you guys. So, having said that, I will do you a good job if I'm elected. I think I will make you proud that I'm the justice of the peace. I don't have, like I tell people, I can't promise that I'm going to change your lives in any super meaningful way, or I'm going to cut your taxes or any of that, but I will work and earn your money, and I will run the court like it was my own bank account. So, having said that, again, thank you. I'm open. Y'all call me or email me anytime. I'm certainly here and interested to help. So, thanks.
Great, thank you. Good luck in your campaign.
Thank you.